Welcome into the Retirement Compass radio show. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Mike Bauer, and I'm broadcasting across the region alongside the managing partner of Stonebridge Wealth Financial, Jeff Gove. Eli Mardock joining us as well. Looking forward to a conversation today with these two members of the Stonebridge Wealth Systems team. And you can visit them at their offices. They got 4 office locations, conveniently located all throughout Nebraska: Kearney, Lincoln, Grand Island, and Omaha. And the goal is always the same at any of the locations at Stonebridge, is to help you navigate the twists and turns of your financial journey so you can retire with complete clarity and confidence. And Jeff, Eli, thanks so much for jumping on today. Good to have you guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, good to be here.
All right, so for anybody jumping in right now, we're going to dive right in. We're going to jump right into a topic that affects just about everybody, tens of millions of Americans, and that's the reality behind the Social Security adjustments. We got some news a little while ago that the cost of living adjustment, the COLA, is potentially going to be a pretty big increase, one of the 4th largest, I believe, in the last 36 years. Before we get into that, I got to ask you both, Jeff and Eli, are you cola, soda, pop, soft drink? Are you like from Atlanta and you call everything Coke? What's your preferred nomenclature for fizzy soft drinks?
Go ahead, Eli.
I guess I'm a pop guy. I think that's a Midwest thing, but I think people say fizzy or say, soda or soda pop, but yeah, that's too much. It's just pop.
Yeah. I go soda.
Go soda.
See, I grew up in the Midwest, and I've lived in different places in the country, and I still hold on to the pop. And I will fight battles that it is pop. So it's a conversation I have all too often, but a conversation that people should have is the one that we're going to have in this segment with Social Security. Look, a higher COLA, that sounds great, and that means more payouts. But Jeff, why is that a reason to not just celebrate just yet?
Well, we have to look at what a COLA actually is. So, when we're talking specifically about Social Security and Medicare, they work hand in hand. So there's a rule, it's called the hold harmless rule. What that rule states is that if you get a raise in your Medicare Part B premium, they have to give you a raise on your Social Security. Now, we call that a cost of living adjustment, but the fact of the matter is, even if you get a 4% raise, you're not actually going to see a 4% difference in your paycheck most of the time, because it's basically going from one pocket to the other, from Social Security to Medicare. You're not actually seeing that increase. So we have to account for that. Now, I think historically the COLAs have been between 3 and 4% roughly. But, what has it actually been? If it's 3% and you're actually getting 2 or you're getting 1.5, we have to look at the other inflation that we're seeing. We all know groceries have gone up. Gas prices have gone up, property taxes. If you live in Nebraska, property taxes are expensive. All of these things are going up. So if you don't have for a lot of people, your biggest income source going up at the same rate, that could create a problem for you in the future.
Jeff, you mentioned the cost of living going up. Eli, when you talk to people day to day, in Nebraska, I mean, just how dramatically have everyday prices changed over the years and changed the way that people look at day-to-day life? Because obviously, the COLA adjustment, that's a yearly thing, but that doesn't change throughout the year when gas, doubles over the course of a month.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just remember, so I graduated in high school in 1999. I could fill up my car for $1. Or not fill it up. Sorry, it was $1 per gallon, and so it was
those
easy
are good
to
gas prices. Fill it up for $1. Let's go.
Yeah, that would have been amazing. I'm really old, by the way. Yeah, no, it was $1 per gallon there. And Jeff, you're about the same age as me. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just filled up my horse, but no, there's it's changed a lot, and really since about 2000, you could just look at inflation. The cost of everything has pretty much doubled, and
wow.
When we all go to the grocery store, we all see how things change, and really CPI, it's not measuring really everything that hits us just day to day. So that's one thing where you read about headline inflation being 3.75 or 4% or around there. That's really not the full story. And I think the other thing is at least when I talk to clients about this long term, you can think of inflation almost like it's a silent thief, and every dollar you have or every $1,000 you have is reduced by 3 to 4% every single year. And so it's important that even for, when we discuss this in the broader view of someone's finances long term, especially when you're approaching retirement, you've got this job of turning everything you've saved for. Let's say you've saved, worked 40 years, you've got this big pile of money. How do I turn that into income for the next 25, 30 years over the course of my retirement? And how do I make sure that that income lasts given inflation and this sort of silent thief where my spending power is eroded gradually over time? And so it's something where we definitely dig into that in deep detail, and it, you can see it really affecting people right now.
I mean, just like you want to have a security system on your home, you want to have a security system against that silent thief. And the team at Stonebridge Wealth Systems, they are the team. Give them a call at 866-295-5146. You can go online to stonebridgeiwm.com. Don't leave your purchasing power to chance. Give them a call and learn how they can build comprehensive strategies designed to protect your wealth from that silent thief of inflation that Eli talked about. So Jeff, you kind of mentioned it. Okay, let's say that it goes up 4%. Let's say your social security check goes up 4%. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're 4% better off. They don't have a 4% increase of living as soon as the calendar ticks over to next year, do they?
Well, no, and that's why whenever you're putting together an income plan, if you don't have one, it's really important that you get one. And Social Security is a big part of that. For a lot of people, Social Security, when you look at from a cumulative standpoint, how much you'll receive over your lifetime, for a lot of us, that's our biggest asset. When you look at, okay, if I start at 66 or 67 and I live to 95, you're going to receive a lot of money. So it's really important that you make the right decision the first time, because if we're going into this thinking, okay, I'm going to get a cost of living adjustment, but it's probably not going to keep up with inflation, it makes it even more important that we make the right decision the first time, because you only have one chance to do it, right? I mean, once you sign up for Social Security, there are some exceptions, but after the first year for everyone, once you've made that decision is made and you're stuck with it for the rest of your life. So I think it's really important that you get that income plan put together. Again, account for Social Security. Look at all of your different options. I see way too many people that are leaving thousands, tens of thousands of dollars on the table just by not knowing what their options are. So I'd encourage you to give us a call and we can walk you through all those options.
I mean, Eli, I want to pivot to you and ask about what some of those options may be, because when Jeff talks about an income plan, look, it's not just Social Security. There's so much that goes into that income plan that you guys at Stonebridge help people create for their retirement so that they don't have to worry about, I'm not going to say that, hey, a 4% jump doesn't make a difference. It can, but what goes into all of the factors? Because it's not just Social Security. It's not just the cost of living adjustment on a year-to-year basis. How do you guys build those elements of the plan together so then that way, somebody looks at, maybe a down year and the COLA and you kind of nod your head. You shake it off. No big deal. It only went up a couple percent. And then the years that it goes up a lot more, you take that. But what really goes into those income plans that you guys help people all throughout all throughout Nebraska and the area plan for?
Yeah, absolutely. You really have to think about all your income sources and where they come from and how stable they are. That's really the biggest thing. And so, folks retiring now have the honor of retiring in probably the most complicated time for any Americans as they enter retirement, because their parents had pensions that created guaranteed lifetime income for them. Social Security, you got more out of it in a way. It covered a lot of their costs. And, on top of that as well, you had lower expenses, and so you had folks that didn't live as long. Medicare actually covered their health expenses. So it's really taking all those very modern considerations where there's more weight on everyone, where you had to take all the risk with your 401k, you made all the investment decisions, and now you have to make the decision yourself on how you turn that into income. So it's looking at your sources, and of course, foundational is that Social Security decision and maximizing that. And if you're guessing, or if you're married and you're making that decision on your own and not without your spouse, that's really a couple's decision. So it's important to understand the implications long-term of that, because that can be hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of your retirement. But then on top of that, there's inflation that comes into it. But probably the biggest thing, or a lot of people don't think of, is, I've saved this pile of money and I need income from it from the next 30 years. But what happens if there's a major market correction? And so we'll look at are really all sources that are on the table. There's tools, some folks will use, you can create your own pension using a tool like an annuity, for example, where you can create alongside Social Security another guaranteed source of income that cannot run out during your lifetime, and also for your spouse. But then also, how do we protect your investments from something called sequence of returns risk, which just means essentially, how do we minimize having to take out income from something when there is, a 20% drop in the market, which things like that do happen. Most people will live through 4 to 5 bear markets in retirement. So it's really protecting your sources of income and creating as much stability as possible.
And for somebody, who's in retirement, who's turned on Social Security, for somebody who's 10 years away from retirement, those are very different conversations that you guys have with people all the time. Give them a call at 866-295-5146. Have your calendar ready. You don't need your checkbook. It's a no cost, no obligation visit with a member of the team at Stonebridge Wealth Systems, 866-295-5146. You can always go online to stonebridgeiwm.com. That's stonebridgeiwm.com. Schedule that complimentary retirement strategy session, conveniently located in Kearney, Lincoln, Grand Island, and Omaha. And, I know I mentioned the website at stonebridgeiwm.com, but they also have a great retirement reality check quiz. If you're on the, on the way towards retirement in the near future, stonebridgeretirement.net is an additional resource that they've built just for you. Take that first step online at stonebridgeretirement.net and complete that very quick retirement reality check quiz. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more on the Retirement Compass radio show.
Did you ever think your retirement would be shared with our government? It's true. Your traditional 401k, IRA, pension, or similar retirement accounts are like a partnership with the IRS. Simply put, they want their tax dollars, and you have them. With our latest tax calculator, you can plug in your own numbers while sitting at home. To find out what your future tax liability could be, scan the QR code or go to stonebridgetaxbill.com.
Thank you so much for spending part of your weekend with us on the Retirement Compass radio show. I'm Mike Bauer, but more importantly, I'm joined by wealth advisors Jeff Gove and Eli Mardock from Stonebridge Wealth Systems. They have locations conveniently all throughout Nebraska, Omaha, Grand Island, Kearney, and Lincoln. If you want to meet in person, you can always go online to stonebridgeiwm.com and set up a meeting there as well. And guys, we're not going to be, couples counselors here, but a conversation that I'm sure you have many times with folks, and maybe they don't even come in knowing that they're having this conversation with you, Jeff. They probably think they're on the same page with couples. Oftentimes, maybe they're not on the same page. How often do you meet with a couple that walks in and they either overtly or covertly have different ideas about money? And really, Jeff, what does that look like when you sit down with somebody that are kind of playing a little couples counselor?
It's really interesting, actually, because a lot of times, they don't even, by the time they sit down at the table, they don't even know that they're not on the same page. So some of this stuff we're figuring out, like while they're sitting at our conference room table, that, you want to go where in retirement? I don't want to travel the world. I'm good staying at home. Or we spend how much? We have how much saved? That's not enough. Some of these types of conversations where it creates issues in some circumstances. Sometimes it's you have how much in credit card debt. Had those conversations, and some of those are really, really difficult. But it is a good opportunity, though, to get on the same page with your finances, because we can help you organize everything. We can go put together your plan, show you. It doesn't matter how much less you have saved than you thought you did. It's a matter of, can we live on what we've saved? Is it going to help us achieve our goal? So we can put together the income plan that says, okay, this is how you can retire the way that you want to. Investment plan, this is how we're going to invest your money to help that happen, make that happen. Tax plan, how do we pay as little tax as possible? And then healthcare, make sure the nursing home doesn't take everything that you've worked hard for. And then legacy, how do we get everything that you worked so hard for to the next generation in the most efficient way possible. But like, these are all things, if we have this put into place, you're going to be on the same page with your finances moving forward because we have a plan. It's the lack of the plan is what creates the division in the finances.
You know, when you take a look at it, and you mentioned, okay, maybe somebody's got a little credit card debt that the other one didn't know about or something like that. But Eli, I'm sure that in just about probably every relationship, there's slightly or very different levels of risk tolerance, right? You probably have somebody who's a little bit more conservative in a relationship, in a marriage. You probably have somebody who's a little bit more aggressive. How does risk tolerance come into the conversation, and is it even your job to get people to agree on risk tolerance moving forward?
Yeah, it's very difficult, and I can tell you, oftentimes the job of an advisor can feel like marriage counseling. It certainly happens, and I can think of numerous couples that I work with and families where risk tolerance is all over the board, and it's very different for the husband than it is for the wife. And I think the first part really just starts with communication, because oftentimes either one isn't aware of how much risk another is taking, or vice versa, or how conservative another is. I've had couples where essentially one member is in highly speculative stocks that have never made a dime, as far as companies, and also on the other end of the spectrum where everything is sitting pretty much in cash. And so oftentimes just having the communication, I can tell you a lot of the times when I sit down with couples, it happens more often than you'd think, where one half of the couple really handles all the financial things. Maybe one person does the bills and day-to-day things, but then the other, whether it's the husband or the wife, is completely handling all the investments and decisions of that nature. And just getting on the same page there is really important. What happens with, eventually, if you're married, one of you, unfortunately, will be a survivor. And so oftentimes just making sure that there's a conversation there where, if something were to happen to the spouse that is really handling everything, the surviving spouse isn't left in a situation where not only it's a really difficult time for them emotionally, but now they have the weight of having to handle all this stuff, and they don't know where it is. They don't know how much it is. They don't know how risky it is. They just don't know everything. So it's really important, I think, for a lot of the couples I've worked with, it's been hugely valuable for them to actually come in and understand with clarity what their actual financial situation is, because they might not actually talk about it as a couple.
Eli, you mentioned getting on the same page is really important. I think of my folks here, Jeff, because my dad, his dream in retirement was to buy an RV and travel around the country. And my mom was like,
it's a good dream.
I will divorce you immediately if you do that. I want nothing to do with an RV. Put me in hotels, and maybe I'll meet you at a few cities. She's like, I want nothing to do with that. And I'm sure you guys encounter situations like that all the time, where maybe somebody has, beaches and umbrellas, and the other person wants to spend as much time on the mountain skiing, or, just on the back porch sipping a, homemade lemonade or something like that. I mean, I'm sure that you get very, very different pictures of what an ideal retirement looks like within a couple.
Yeah, and I guess on top of that, it's the spender versus the saver. Yeah. Typically the person that was in charge of the finances is the saver. If you've saved well, it's because you're saving, right? So you get to that point where you're retired, you've saved well, you've put money away. It's really hard to flip that switch to go from, okay, I'm accumulating. Now it's time to start spending some of this money we worked really hard for. And the one that wasn't in charge of the finances, they're kind of the free spirit, like, let's go. We got this pile of money. Let's go do stuff. The person that did all the saving or the planning, it's like, man, we could run out of money. I don't want to deplete this. But, after we put a plan together, again, showing that, like I had somebody a couple weeks ago that was they're an existing client, and she doesn't want to spend because she's the saver. But they were making it was a crazy, like $300,000 a year on their investments. So yes, it's okay that you go spend 50 of that 300 that you made. Like, you're not going to run out of money. unless you totally change your habits and start, spending $500,000, $600,000 a year. But it is really difficult for that individual to flip that switch. But again, that's what a plan does for you. It shows you, okay, we can spend and we can still accumulate. We can do both in our retirement.
It's almost like you guys at times can give people a license to spend the money that they've worked so hard to earn. If you and your spouse are not on the exact same page, or maybe even, not to get too deep into couples counseling here, but maybe if you think you're on the same page, but there's a little bit of doubt there regarding market risk, or you've never really openly aligned or had a conversation about your individual financial goals, especially maybe in retirement, your individual retirement plans, there's potential for massive confusion there. And, specifically, Eli and Jeff were just talking about risk. And they've put together a great tool for anybody listening. It's StonebridgeRiskQuiz.com. That's StonebridgeRiskQuiz.com. It's a quick complimentary risk assessment quiz. And you can take that, you could take it together. Maybe they could take it separately. Either way, you can sit down and have a meeting with the team at Stonebridge Wealth Systems, 866-295-5146. Have your calendar ready when you call 866-295-5146. All right, Eli, let's say that, they aren't even at, this hypothetical couple isn't even at retirement together. What happens if one spouse wants to retire and the other one isn't ready, either financially or emotionally? They're not ready, and one of them is ready. That's got to be an added wrinkle to this whole conversation.
Yeah, that comes up a lot, where essentially one spouse will, kind of joke, well, I'd love to, stop working today. And the other one is like, oh, no, you're working until this date because I've done the math on it and, this is the plan and that sort of thing. But I think the biggest thing, and there's different ways to verify things, but I think if you can sit down with people and really show them, okay, here's a comprehensive view of your entire landscape and of your entire financial landscape, and really showing you every aspect of your financial life in a way that you haven't seen it before. And that kind of clarity usually brings people together. So in terms of, what's it look like for retirement, if you can show, look, mathematically, from a quantitative perspective here, we're able to verify that this looks good. And so, in terms of the question of when you retire, mathematically, could you do that now? Could you wait 2-3 years? Maybe there's other considerations like Medicare eligibility, et cetera. But for me, it all comes down to clarity. And oftentimes disagreements between couples happen when there isn't clarity for them. And one has an idea that maybe isn't verified versus another. And they both have these feelings and emotions or whatever. And those are all valid. But if you can actually give them clarity that's backed by numbers as well, that can really bring people together, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah, I like that. Clarity from a mathematically quantitative, I can't even say it. Clarity from a mathematically quantitative standpoint can help bring clarity into your relationship, into your future in terms of retirement. I mean, because honestly, failing to coordinate your individual financial visions can create a massive problem, can snowball into massive problems, plural. The solution is establishing a unified income framework, a legacy framework with a trusted advisor, and that's exactly what the team at Stonebridge Wealth Systems does. Take action today. Protect your spouse and family. I'm sure a lot of times you guys have somebody come in and the first thing they say is, I want to make sure my spouse is good. Whenever the unthinkable happens, when all is said and done, I want to make sure that they're okay. They want to make sure that I'm okay, and you can do that. Have that conversation. Sit down with the team at Stonebridge Wealth Systems to get on the calendar for a complimentary consultation. That first visit, 866-295-5146. You can also go online to stonebridgeiwm.com and set up that visit with Jeff, Eli, and the experienced team, 866-295-5146. And you can meet them in person at any of the 4 locations, Omaha, Grand Island, Kearney, and Lincoln. Their expert guidance is right in your backyard. We're going to step aside for a quick break. We'll be right back on the Retirement Compass Radio Show.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Gove with Stonebridge Wealth Systems. Are you taking too much risk with your retirement or not enough? Most people really aren't sure. That's why we created the Stonebridge Risk Quiz. In just a few minutes, it helps you discover your personal risk tolerance. Your score could reveal why your investments sometimes feel too aggressive or maybe too conservative. It's quick, simple, and eye-opening. Scan the QR code or visit stonebridgeriskquiz.com to see if your money matches your mindset.
Thank you for spending part of your weekend with us on the Retirement Compass radio show. I'm Mike Bauer, and I'm joined by Jeff Gove and Eli Mardock from Stonebridge Wealth Systems. And Jeff, you know, when most people think of retirement, maybe not most, but some people, I know I think golf course, maybe the beach, but you work with a lot of Nebraska producers and ag families. Does that picture really fit for somebody who's spent their, blood, sweat, and tears on the home property, on the farm? Is it golf courses and sandy beaches, or is that maybe a different picture for those folks listening that relate to that?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it is, but sometimes it's just, I don't want to work as much. I want to be able to go, during calving season, I don't want to be out in the cold in February or March, pulling calves or whatever you're doing out in the cold. I want to still be involved in the farm, but maybe you have one of your kids that's taking over the farm that, I'm going to help plant. I'm going to help harvest if I'm here. And my kid will just pay me hourly or something like that. Typically it's more of a phase out. And, a lot of our farmers, a lot of our listeners, if you know farmers, a lot of them work forever. They don't stop working. But having a plan for a farming family or any business owner, if we grouped all of them together, having a plan going into it is critical because, speaking of farmers specifically, a lot of times we're trying to work the tax situation. We're trying to, maybe push income to the next year to lower our tax liability this year. We're prepaying expenses. We're doing all of the things that are necessary to pay as little tax as possible. But if we're playing that game, if we're doing that, and let's say you don't have a plan, you get to that last year and you've prepaid your expenses and you push your income. So that last farming year, you don't have any expenses and you have all of this income that you're going to have to take. That's going to really, really hurt. And then on top of that, now we have equipment that we're going to sell. Some people might sell it on contract to limit that liability, but you're only going to limit it so much because you're not going to be able to finance that equipment out too far. For somebody who's buying it, they're not going to want to pay you over 15 years because they'll probably get rid of that piece of equipment in that 15-year period. But these are things that you can put together a plan for. Let's pay a little bit of tax as we go, or let's put a plan in place where we can pay tax down the road, but at a known rate or at maybe not a known rate, but a lower potential rate, depending on what taxes due, and just take out a little bit at a time. There's a lot of different things that you can do, but the whole point is you have to have a plan in place. Like, this isn't a deal where you do it the last year and try to figure it out, because then you're kind of stuck.
Yeah, and you definitely don't want to be stuck. I mean, a successful retirement for an ag family, for a farmer, doesn't mean you stop getting dirt on your fingernails. I mean, even if you're a business owner and it's not a farm, it just means that you can change your relationship with financial risk. It sounds like you've spent decades carrying the weight of an entire operation, an entire property, an entire family legacy on your shoulders. And I'm sure, Jeff, sometimes cutting back from, 100 hours a week outside to, okay, just, maybe I'm going to do 30, especially in the colder months, can make a huge difference. A phased plan can keep you doing what you love without the financial stress keeping you awake at night. Take action today. Give Stonebridge Wealth Systems a call. If you're trying to figure out how to slow down without giving up the farm, reach out to Jeff and the team at Stonebridge Wealth Systems, 866-295-5146. You can get in a complimentary consultation with Jeff in the Kearney office. If you're elsewhere in the state, Lincoln, Grand Island, and Omaha are other locations where Stonebridge Wealth Systems has offices as well. You can always call 866-295-5146 or go online to stonebridgeiwm.com. We'll be right back with more on the Retirement Compass radio show.
Hi, I'm Tim Kohanic with Stonebridge Wealth Systems. You've worked hard and saved for retirement, But how much of it will you actually get to keep? If your savings are in a traditional IRA or 401k, Uncle Sam has a claim on every withdrawal you make. And with tax rates expected to rise in the future, the cost of waiting could be significant. A Roth conversion may help lower your future tax burden. Want to know what your liability could look like? Scan the QR code or visit StonebridgeRothQuiz.com to take our Roth conversion quiz today and see if a conversion makes sense for you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Retirement Compass Radio Show. I'm Mike Bauer, broadcasting with Jeff Gove and Eli Mardock from Stonebridge Wealth Systems. 4 locations in Nebraska: Kearney, Lincoln, Grand Island, and Omaha. And the location on the old internet is StonebridgeIWM.com. Let's get a little Hollywood, guys. I mean, I know that that's a world away, but let's get a little bit of Hollywood. We're going to have some fun looking at a serious topic here and pull some valuable financial lessons straight out of films and TV and explore some iconic movie characters that maybe made catastrophic financial blunders. So I'm going to start. I mean, this was, this is many moons ago, but the movie Wall Street, Gordon Gekko, his motto was "Greed is good." Okay, so I mean, we've all heard that before, but Jeff, is that true? Greed is good? It's a legendary movie quote.
Well, that clip was a little creepy. It's a little scary without the context of the movie, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
We don't have time for all of the whole movie.
Right. I mean, when we're looking at retirement, I mean, if you're going to get greedy with your investments, you're going to take more risk, right? I mean, you can't put your money in a CD and say, I'm greedy, I'm going to get, 3% from the bank. I'm really sticking it to them. So when we're talking about greed, we're talking about taking more risk. So, I was talking to you guys about a client of mine that, for the record, became a client way later, just for the record, but he retired in 2002, and he started with 700,000. He told me. He just told me this yesterday. He started with 700,000. He's got less than 100,000 now. And he's like, I think I got, screwed by my advisor. I think we were too risky, or we weren't taking enough risk. I don't know what happened, but something didn't go the way that it should have. I feel like we were being greedy and trying to win here. But I pulled up a chart of the S&P 500, and from when he retired, for the next 10 years, the market was basically flat. So when we talk about sequence of returns, it's important to this conversation. But when you get greedy, if you put all your money in the S&P 500, it's all at risk. And now he's taking money. He's retired, so he's got to take money from this portfolio. And I think he said he was taking about $40,000 a year, which is probably too much from that amount of money anyway. But if you're taking $40,000 a year from your investments, and over that 10-year period, the market is flat, like there's no growth, and you have a year like 2007, 2008, when the market's down 40%, and you still took out your $40,000, that's how you end up with $90,000 left, several years later, and potentially looking at running out of money or decreasing your income, essentially cutting some of your expenses, not doing the things that you wanted to do. If we get greedy, those are the types of things that we could be looking at. The alternative is, back then, he could have put together a plan that allowed him to retire the way that he wanted to, but take a lot of the risk off the table. So when you're talking about risk, you have to think about, what am I risking? For him, it was his money, but it was also his future. Because he's not working. His body's kind of broken down. He doesn't have the ability to go back to work. So you're also sacrificing your future. So long-winded answer, but I would say no, greed is not good when it comes to planning for your retirement, planning those retirement years.
Eli, Jeff just talked about, sequence of returns in terms of the timing. When this gentleman retired, it was a bad time. He retired at the wrong time. How do you help people? Because, if they want to retire, or maybe they can't continue working for one reason or another, how do you help people build income plans for their retirement that can survive situations like that, where the sequence of returns was quite unfortunate in this example?
Yeah, I mean, it's just something that's out of anyone's control. You can't control if you're about to retire into a wonderful bull market, or if you're going to have a situation like this gentleman had, and you've got 10 years of really stagnant returns in the market, but you still have income needs. And so you need to look at all your options. And so we're just big believers in understanding what tools are available and how we can create income from those tools. So of course you want a Social Security strategy that makes sense, where you're able to maximize what you get. And maybe that means, a lot of people say, well, always wait until 70, you get more from Social Security that way. It could mean claiming earlier, potentially in a situation like that, where you're having to rely on your investments less by having a guaranteed source of income, a stable source of income. Some folks will use tools like an annuity to create a pension for themselves as well. This creates additional guaranteed income that really goes hand in hand with Social Security, so that if the market is zigging and zagging up and down, sort of like a roller coaster ride, your income, your lifestyle isn't changing because you've got a guaranteed source of income. And it's not something, I've seen this work with clients, but there's a company called Ernst & Young that did a study. They don't sell annuities. They're not financial advisors. They're accountants. It's a worldwide firm. And their study of their clients found that essentially clients that incorporate additional guaranteed income into their plans at certain levels tend to have a higher income success, or overall retirement outcome, or probability of success in retirement, and ended up with about 3% more in ending assets than folks that didn't have those guaranteed income sources. So again, it's just the math says one thing, and you have to look at all your options, essentially. And there's other tools you can use as well, bucket strategy, but really creating ways that insulate your income sources from the volatility of the market.
All right, Jeff. So from Wall Street to the Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan Belfort made a ton of money in the Wolf of Wall Street, or, in the story there, but yet somehow managed to lose all of it. What's a lesson that people can take from that?
Yeah, we talk about this all the time, but it doesn't matter how much you make. What matters is how much of it you get to keep. Whether that's from, overspending, it's from paying too much in taxes. It doesn't really matter where that money's going. The thing that matters is how much of your money you get to keep. I mean, he made a ton of money. I don't know how much he made, but it was a lot. Where your lifestyle could get very out of control. And I think it did a bit from him, if you've ever seen the movie. But yeah, I mean, it all comes down to how much of what you earned you get to keep. How much of it are you saving? Are you saving the appropriate amount that's going to help you be successful in the future? Because the day could come when, Eli, we both had some clients where they're way exposed to a specific stock. So maybe something did really, really well. So, now 75% of your net worth is in one or two stocks. Again, going back to being greedy, we could let that run. But you could literally lose everything. You could lose 75% of your net worth in a day. I mean, when you buy one individual stock. So we want to have appropriate risk, not be crazy greedy. We want to make money when the market's going up, but we want to also try to protect when the market's going down.
I did a quick Googling, you guys. At the height of Stratton Oakmont's operations in the late 90s, Jordan Belfort's peak net worth was estimated around $200 million to $400 million. We would also, advise people to not end up in jail and having to pay hundreds of millions of dollars in restitution as well. Whether you're Gordon Gekko and you're overexposing your assets to market risk, or letting lifestyle inflation drain your hard-earned cash like in the Wolf of Wall Street, bad financial habits can derail your future, and that's exactly what we're talking about with Jeff Gove and Eli Mardock on the Retirement Compass radio show. You can call Stonebridge Wealth Systems at 866-295-5146. Review your current roadmap. Build a strategy that protects what you keep. 866-295-5146. 5146 or visit stonebridgeiwm.com. All right, there's about 12 million holiday movies out there, but really the classic is It's a Wonderful Life. And Uncle Billy nearly destroyed the Bailey building and loan in It's a Wonderful Life, lost a large bank deposit. Eli, is there a real world retirement lesson hiding in the eventually beautiful story of It's a Wonderful Life that I'm sure is a tearjerker for everybody listening?
Yeah, there is. And the thing is, that movie, it's a lot of small mistakes that add up over time, and not having a plan and maybe not getting advice where there's someone that's truly looking out for your best interests over their own. And that movie is striking to me because even my own family, and I talk about this sometimes with clients, I have a family member that I love very much that inherited a lot of money, and when this happened for them in the 50s, it was equivalent of maybe it was 10 million then. It'd be about 50 million in today's dollars. And by the time they passed away, after all of these small mistakes, and this is not getting advice, it's working with brokers that we're kind of getting them into the greed is good, the next hot thing, and and then making questionable business decisions and maybe some lifestyle things as well. And then also, I think for this particular individual, and this comes back to that greed is good thing, doing really speculative, greedy trades as that almost become like gambling when you're doing some of these more risk-oriented options trading on the internet, sort of day trading type things. But that huge amount, 10 million in the 50s, by the time that, really by the end of this person's life, was down to about $350,000. And there's really nothing to show for that. Part of that was long-term care and not really having a plan around that as well. But it just shows that for my family, which is really affected by this, that's wealth that could have been generational wealth, and it really turned into something that just evaporated. And that really, that movie, there's parallels where these little mistakes add up over time and can really, really change things for families and for generations.
Yeah, and those, the biggest financial mistakes, as you're saying, there aren't necessarily big. Maybe they're the kinds that develop slowly enough you don't even recognize them until they're too expensive to fix, to right the ship. Look, financial complacency and bad organizational habits are a major problem no matter what the Hollywood stories are out there. Your story is to hopefully create a retirement story you'll be proud to live. And you can give the team at Stonebridge Wealth Systems a call. We'll start writing some scripts, right? We'll get the playwrights in there. We'll start doing some screenwriting. We'll figure out your situation individually, and you can meet with them at 866-295-5146. That phone number again is 866-295-5146. You can always go online, stonebridgeiwm.com, to initiate a written strategy review. They have offices in Kearney, Lincoln, Grand Island, and Omaha. The team is ready to assist you. We'll be back after a quick break on the Retirement Compass radio show.
A captain can navigate the open ocean. Calm days, stormy nights, they've seen it all. But when the ship reaches the harbor, everything changes. There's narrow passages, shifting tides, and hidden rocks. That's when the harbor master steps aboard, a specialist who knows how to bring you in safely. I'm Tim Kulhanek with Stonebridge Wealth Systems, and we're harbor masters for your retirement, guiding families through life's most important passage. Call the number below to schedule your complimentary retirement strategy session.
Welcome back to the Retirement Compass radio show. I'm Mike Bauer, and I get to hang out with Jeff Gove and Eli Mardock today with the Stonebridge Wealth Systems. And for anybody listening, you get to hang out with them too if you schedule an appointment, 866-295-5146. It's kind of a hang, but really it's a conversation. You sit down and you can figure out what your future is going to look like in retirement. And I want to start things off with, there's a lot of people listening that are not in retirement, but they're approaching retirement. And for somebody approaching age 65, lean in close. We're going to pull back the curtain on the massive healthcare budget shock known as Medicare. Jeff, I'm sure that number, 65, arrives faster than most people expect. And as you guys well know, there's significant hidden costs. When most people come in terms of retirement healthcare, do they just kind of figure like, oh, this is easy, I'll just go on Medicare, no big deal?
Yeah, and what's interesting is a lot of people think that I can't wait to go on Medicare because it's free. Medicare is like Social Security. I get my Social Security, they pay me, and I get Medicare. That's my health insurance for retirees, and it's free. It doesn't cost anything, and that is far, far from the truth.
Yeah, right.
Your deductible will be low. It has low deductible, so it's technically good insurance, but it is not free. For a lot of people, if you work for an employer that is covering your health insurance, obviously you're going to pay more because you're going to pay for your Medicare Part B premium. You're going to get a supplement, and then you need to get a drug plan. Even if you don't have prescriptions, you need to get a drug plan because if you don't and you need to add one in the future, you pay a penalty for every month that you didn't have it back to 65. So it could be really expensive if you don't have it. And you have to pay that penalty for the rest of your life. So you got to make sure you do that. But for a household that isn't dealing with IRMA, which I'm guessing we're going to talk about coming up, income-related monthly adjustments, you're still going to spend, $500-$600 a month in Medicare premium. By the time you pay Part B, your supplement, and your drug plan, if you're married. So it still is an expense that you definitely need to account for.
I think it's amazing to think that people think, oh, it's just going to be, like Social Security, but it's not just expensive. It also can be quite complicated. And the team at Stonebridge Wealth Systems, they have a great resource on their website at stonebridgeiwm.com/Medicare. That's the shortcut. You can just go to stonebridgeiwm.com and you can click on the services tab and go down from there. But you can also just type in stonebridgeiwm.com/Medicare. And okay, it can be costly, but it can also be complicated. Eli, what do people need to understand about Medicare as they're approaching that magical age of 65?
Yeah, really the enrollment and the timing of that can be really confusing for folks. We get questions a lot about this, and you really, you have a 7-month initial enrollment period or window. That's really important. That's very strict there, and missing it without either qualifying employer coverage. It can really compound with some late enrollment penalties for Part B and Part D. And those, just like Jeff said, follow you for life here. And so it's really something where if you don't have clarity on that, I really encourage you. We have great in-house Medicare specialists here at Stonebridge as well that can really give you clarity. So it's something, I really encourage folks where if you are approaching 65, you're not quite sure, rather than guess, we'd love to have a conversation and just give you clarity on what your options are, what you need to do. And that way, you're not stuck with one of those penalties that follow you for the rest of your life. And I've met many people that have those penalties, and they're incredibly irritating to them. I'll say that because you're stuck with a penalty that you can't appeal, and it will be there for as long as you're on Earth.
And you said 7 months. I'm sure that people look at that and go, 7 months. All right, I got 5 months to take care of this. I don't have to do it now. We'll get there. And then all of a sudden it's 9 months later and they're like, uh-oh, now I'm stuck with this. And Eli, you mentioned that's a permanent thing, right? That is a permanent and compounding penalty for not making it within that window, that 7-month window, which sounds like a lot of time, but life happens. 7 months can fly by.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's just, with anything, especially in terms of financial planning, things get in the way, life gets in the way, all sorts of things happen. But it's just something where, again, and a lot of folks there's not necessarily easy places to get information about this. And so it's really important, I think, to make sure that if you have any questions or if if you're unsure about any of it, that you just sit down and get some clarity. And that's, I think the baseline for making a decision.
And you mentioned, come on in, have a conversation, stonebridgeiwm.com. You have Medicare specialists at stonebridgeiwm.com/Medicare. As we're talking about healthcare, these costs are one of the single largest expenses you're going to face in retirement. And a single timing mistake, as we just learned, it can penalize you not for a little while, for literally the rest of your life. And those are permanent if you miss the enrollment period. You can begin the conversation with Stonebridge Wealth Systems at 866-295-5146. That's 295-5146. And align your income plan with upcoming medical realities. StonebridgeIWM.com, specifically /Medicare for info on that. But Jeff, a little bit ago, you mentioned IRMA, the income related monthly adjustment amount. Do you find that people get blindsided by that quite often?
Yeah, typically if you're exposed to that, you are probably blindsided by it. And the reason for that is you get this letter from Medicare 2 years later after the event happened. So it's based on your income when you file your tax return. So a couple years later, you get this surprise letter that, hey, instead of paying this for Medicare, your Part B premium, now you get to pay this. It's much higher. It's doubled. It's whatever the number is. It's all income based. So, and some of those reasons that you could have to pay that are maybe you sold a business, maybe you sold some ground, maybe you simply you didn't do anything, but let's say you had a non-qualified account, a brokerage account that's not an IRA, and your financial advisor rebalanced that portfolio for you. Which when you do that, you're going to pay income tax, or you'll pay long-term or short-term capital gains, which add up to get you over those income thresholds potentially. So it could be a decision that you never made. It could be taking Social Security and starting your pension. There's so many different things that could impact it. But yeah, typically it is a surprise. Nobody's planning on that. Nobody's talking to them about, okay, if you take out this IRA or I rebalance this portfolio, here's what's going to happen to you in 2 years. And even if they did, you're not going to remember that. But yeah, it's not a great surprise, but it is a surprise.
Eli, for somebody that is approaching that magical number of 65, and I'm just guessing off the top that there's probably a lot of people listening or a lot of people that you guys talk with that 65 is when they aim to retire because, hey, their Medicare is there at that number. But for somebody listening, Eli, that's 61 or 60 or is approaching that magical number of 65, what can they do now to prepare for that transition when they get to 65 and they can take Medicare?
Yeah, absolutely. So that bridge is something a lot of planning can be done around. So I've got a lot of clients who either in the past or even right now, we're sort of doing the planning around, okay, so if we're retiring at 61, 62, how do we bridge that gap in a way that it makes sense here? And you do have to be aware of any decisions you're making, for example, at age 63, because a large distribution or anything that happens during that time will affect your Medicare premiums when you're 65. There's a 2-year look back on that. So the planning is really, really important. But oftentimes with folks, if you're just retiring now, COBRA can be a good option. It can be a little more expensive, though I recently just had a client who we analyzed that versus healthcare.gov, and COBRA was very reasonable. It's also a known quantity, right? He knows exactly the coverage he's going to get. He doesn't have to shop around for something else, and he's able to use HSA money to pay for that. So it's tax advantage money as well. And so it's something where you can start to plan some of this. So even folks that are in their 50s or 40s, if you were thinking about retiring at 55, 60, 65, what you do for healthcare is going to be really important to plan around that, and an HSA can be a really good option for you. But then beyond that, looking at what's what there is for healthcare.gov. But again, with some of those subsidies having phased out, post-pandemic, you have to be under $85,000 as a household to qualify for some of those. So it can be an expensive option. But it's just very, very important to do the math and to do the planning around it. Otherwise, just like Jeff said, you could be blindsided by something that happened 2 years ago where you didn't realize there was either a calculation error or something you did, whether you paid for a kid's wedding and you took a withdrawal out and that was taxable, or you had to get a new car, or there was a house payment, or you did a Roth conversion and you didn't think about the math carefully, whatever it is. All that stuff can trigger those income-related monthly adjustment amounts. It really is just a phantom tax, right? It's how you keep less. You're paying more for your Social Security. And the thing with IRMA as well is that the inflation rate on that has grown on an average by 7% every year since 2020. So the costs are going up. So you really do want to avoid those unnecessary, if possible, surcharges.
You mentioned unnecessary, if possible, surcharges, and you even a little bit ago, Eli, you talked about the permanent premium penalties if you if you miss the window. That could really be compounding if you don't have a plan to avoid those permanent penalties and unexpected surcharges. I mean, Jeff, you said you get blindsided by that. You talk with people all the time. Like, the solution is a coordinated tax and income strategy built to handle healthcare costs before you turn 65. Take control. Sorry. Hairball. I'm going to mark that there, obviously, as I start coughing. The solution is a coordinated tax and income strategy built to handle healthcare costs before you turn 65. Take control of your retirement brackets today. Guys, it's been a great hour. Thank you so much for taking time on the Retirement Compass radio show. I want to extend a massive thank you to both you, Eli, and Jeff, and to everybody listening, to the entire team at Stonebridge Wealth Systems as well. Don't leave the next 30 years or so of your life to luck or complacency. Don't gamble with your future. Take action right now with a written planning process, and you can do that by calling Stonebridge Wealth Systems. Get it started today, 866-295-5146. That's 866-295-5146. 5146. You can have a quick sit down, review your current strategy. They will help you design a custom retirement story you will truly be proud to live. Whether you're in Kearney, Lincoln, Grand Island, or Omaha, the team at Stonebridge is ready to welcome you in. You can also go online to stonebridgeiwm.com. That's stonebridgeiwm.com, and request a consultation there as well. On behalf of Eli and Jeff, the entire team at Stonebridge, I'm Mike Bauer. We'll talk to you next week on the Retirement Compass Radio Show.